Fred, thanks for writing this issue. You're writing on global M&A, the future of international M&A. One of the ironic predictions you make is that, perhaps not ironic, is that while there's a dearth of M&A now for obvious reasons, you say there's going to be a boom very shortly, another boom. Why do you say that?
Well, the conditions are ripe for it. You've got excess capacity in a lot of industry, which means it's going to have to disappear, and merger and acquisition one of the routes. You've got a number of companies that have very strong balance sheets, so they're just waiting for the opportune time to pick up some new companies. Valuations are quite low. And then you've got some companies that are in financial distress that are going to have to look for someone else to bail them out other than government.
So in what sectors might this new boom take place, and through and from which countries?
I think the sectors pretty well cover the spectrum. Financial services are obviously a number of manufacturing areas, steel, machinery, autos, probably even in the service areas, whether it's airlines, whether it's consulting services. So it'll be across the entire spectrum, because the current economic crisis has basically impacted all areas. In terms of the countries, I think what's going to be interesting is this new wave is going to be heavily dependent on cross-border mergers and acquisitions.
What's the end game for Canada? What's Canada going to look like in the middle of this boom, when the dust settles the next time around?
I think there's going to be some sort of interesting questions, problems that are going to arise for Canada, because Canadian companies are more likely to be targets than to be the acquirers. And then the question becomes, how tolerant are we going to be to see more and more of our leading companies being picked off by foreign companies?
So two of the interesting things you point to, obstacles, if you will, or phenomena that are going to be that policymakers are going to tangle with, and mergers and targets of mergers are going to have to tangle with, are antitrust and protectionism. Can you discuss those a little bit?
Yeah, I think in the antitrust areas, because we're going to have cross-border mergers in many industries, how do the antitrust authorities in different countries cooperate, collaborate to try to address these types of mergers? Will any one particular area of the US, European Union, try to take a lead? Will there be conflicting outcomes? More importantly, I'm not a great fan of antitrust. I don't think they're useful, but it'll take time for other people to sort of adopt that attitude. In terms of protectionism, there are going to be cross-border mergers. And every country wants to have their own champions, so they want their companies to be the leaders out there. They're not going to react favorably when their dominant companies are the targets, especially if they're the targets of companies. Again, if you're from Europe, you want to not be taken over by a US company or an Asian company. The US, you don't want to be taken over by an Asian company. So there'll be a number of issues and problems going to arise because of the cross-border mergers.
In your piece, Fred, you seem to have a problem with national champions, this idea. Am I reading it correctly? And if so, why is that the case?
Well, again, every country explicitly or implicitly has their national champions and try to promote them. Somehow they believe that that's required for strong growth, strong productivity performance. The reality is that's not critical. It's whatever the strengths of your country, they're going to be more important than whether or not you have a national champion, especially one that's artificially propped up and supported by the government.
Well, let me finish on touching on what I think is your favorite sector based on my knowledge of your work, Fred, and that's the international air transport sector. What's the end game here with respect to what's happening now? Collapse of some companies, M&A here and there. Where is this going to end?
Well, if you didn't have any government restrictions, foreign ownership restrictions, other restrictions in the various travel treaties, we would probably be down to about half dozen major international carriers and probably another half dozen local, regional, low-cost carriers. But unions are adamantly opposed to mergers. Governments, again, in many parts of the world believe they need their national champion. We need a flag carrier, for whatever reason I have no idea. But given the financial problems faced by carriers, we're going to see more and more pressure to relax and eventually eliminate those foreign ownership restrictions, and then we will see these multinational mergers occur.
One final question for this interview, Fred. What airline did you use to fly in from the suburbs today?
From the suburbs, my favorite, the TTC,
Okay.
but that's a story for another day.
Thank you very much, Fred.
Oh, you're very welcome.